Welcome. I'm Doug Morgan, and you're listening to Uncommon Sense, where we hunt for the truth in the topics you're not supposed to talk about, Christianity and politics. Hey everyone, we made it. We made it to Friday. And so here on the podcast every Friday, we love to bring you FOMO Friday. FOMO Friday is where we bring you the stories of the week because you're not listening to propaganda media anymore. And yet you don't want to have that fear of missing out. And so we bring you the stories that you need to know about. And there's some good ones this week. There's some important ones this week, and we want to get right into that. And from the series of articles from the Daily Wire comes this very first one. This is awesome news. The Supreme Court ruled Thursday that South Carolina is allowed to ban Medicaid funds from going to Planned Parenthood. Wow, that's an awesome ruling. Justices voted 6-3, and I bet you could probably guess which were the 6 and which were the 3, to reverse the Fourth Circuit's ruling that an individual Medicaid user could bring a federal civil rights lawsuit over Planned Parenthood being excluded from Medicaid in South Carolina. Now, Justice Neil Gorsuch authored the court's opinion, saying that Medicaid law does not clearly give patients the right to sue. He noted that states have the authority to decide which healthcare providers are, quote, qualified, unquote, and can participate in Medicaid. For example, doctors who have committed felonies may be excluded, and Planned Parenthood can challenge its exclusion from Medicaid through South Carolina's administrative process, according to Gorsuch. The decision paves the way for other Republican-led states who may want to exclude Planned Parenthood from their Medicaid programs. And Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson penned a dissent that was joined by Justices Sotomayor and Keegan. As I said, you could probably guess which ones were the dissenting ones. And they said, quote, at a minimum, it will deprive Medicaid recipients in South Carolina of their only meaningful way of enforcing a right that Congress has explicitly granted to them. Except the Supreme Court ruled that an abortion's not a right. But anyway, South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster, he's a Republican, previously argued that taxpayers should not be forced to subsidize abortion providers who are in direct opposition to their beliefs. Quote, 7 years ago, we took a stand to protect the sanctity of life and defend South Carolina's authority and values. And today, we are finally victorious, he said in a statement on Thursday. South Carolina cites its own state law prohibiting the use of taxpayer dollars for abortion. Federal law also prohibits Medicaid funds from paying for most but not all abortions, and the funds are permitted in the cases of rape, incest, and when the life of the mother is in danger. Planned Parenthood has 2 clinics in South Carolina, one in Charleston and one in Columbia. And the court's decision is yet another loss for the pro-abortion lobby, which saw, of course, Roe v. Wade overturned 3 years ago. It was, believe it or not, 3 years ago this week, nixing the supposed constitutional right to abortion, which Ketanji Brown Jackson referred to, but of course is not actually a thing. Pro-life leaders celebrated Thursday's ruling, saying Planned Parenthood's taxpayer-funded gravy train is swiftly coming to an end. That's the SBA, Pro-Life America President Marjorie Denenfelser, and that's what she said. She also said it's days of posing as a trusted healthcare provider are over, as the truth is exposed, most recently by the revelations of botched procedures, open sewage, and other horrifying conditions at their facilities across America, and the tragic death of yet another young woman following a late-term abortion. Now, she also added that Planned Parenthood is more interested in funneling millions into political activism and litigation And meanwhile, Democrats were just simply incensed. I mean, they came out. Here's what Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said on X. He said, "Make no mistake, Senate Republicans own the consequences of this loathsome MAGA Supreme Court decision. They packed our courts with extremists, and they're the chief architects of the dismal state of women's health care in America." Wow. Well, anyway, I don't know who listens to Chuck Schumer anymore, but anyway, there it is for you. And yet there was some news that wasn't quite so good, and this comes out of New York. Democratic socialists, and really, you can almost you would really call him a communist. Zoran Mamdani, he received overwhelming support from many of New Yorkers' wealthiest neighborhoods in Tuesday's primary, while working class voters earning under $50,000 rejected him by nearly 20 points in favor of ex-governor Andrew Cuomo. So he must be really bad if you're voting for Cuomo, right? The scandal-plagued ex-New York governor Andrew Cuomo called Mamdani on Tuesday night to congratulate the Siberian-born immigrant on his victory. Quote, "Tonight was not our night," Cuomo said. "Tonight was Assemblyman Mamdani's night." And Mamdani emerged from the first round of New York City's Democratic mayoral primary with roughly 44% of the vote, while Cuomo came in second with 36. Well, according to election results published by the New York Times, Mamdani won counties with a median income of more than $117,000 per year by an average of 13 points, while Cuomo won counties with a median income below $62,000 by 13 points. Cuomo trounced Mamdani by nearly 20 points among black voters, while Mamdani, he won white voters by 5 points, Hispanic by 6, and Asian Americans by 15. Mamdani's margin of victory is in the wealthier counties is likely to increase after several rounds of ranked choice tabulation continues throughout the week and the weekend. Given their close relationship throughout the campaign and similar policy platforms, votes from city comptroller Brad Lander, who received 11% of the first round votes, will likely lean in his favor. Many of the New York's most affluent neighborhoods went for Mamdani, including Cobble Hill, Park Slope, Brooklyn Heights, those type of things. Cuomo overwhelmingly won several working class neighborhoods in the South Bronx and Eastern Brooklyn area. Mamdani, throughout his campaign, advocated for defunding the police. I mean, this is okay. Here's what he stands on. Okay, if you've never heard about him before, or most people haven't, right? He's kind of came out of nowhere here. But he campaigned advocating for defunding the police, rent control expansion, government-sponsored grocery stores. Yeah, believe it or not, government-sponsored grocery stores. I mean, you don't get much more communist than that. Higher taxes. He's advocating for it. And $65 million in tax-funded gender-affirming trans procedures for adults and children. That's what his campaign is going for here. This is what he's putting out there. He's saying, vote for me. This is what I stand on. Now, Mamdani's proposals are projected to cost the already cash-strapped city more than $10 billion. And his victory follows his effective use of social media to promote his platform and strategic partnerships with other far-left Democrats. His campaign capitalized on Representative AOC's endorsement to build momentum ahead of the June 24th primary. And Cuomo declined to say if he would run in the November general election as an independent. He might do that. We'll see. Now, should the governor, or the ex-governor, enter the race as an independent, that would make the race a 5-person contest between Cuomo, Mamdani, independent Democrat, Mayor Eric Adams, the one who's right now mayor and running as an independent, and Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa. He's a talk show host, and independent Jim Walden, who is a former assistant U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of New York. Now, a few things on the win here, though. Billionaire investor Bill Ackman vowed on Wednesday to provide, get this, hundreds of millions of dollars to back any viable challenger against Democratic Socialist Mamdani in New York City's mayoral race. And here's what Ben Shapiro called him. He calls him Greta Thunberg with a beard. So if you want to know what he stands for, he's Greta Thunberg with a beard. And this is what I'll say. We get what we deserve when it comes to voting. If we vote and it's a fair vote, then we are going to get what we deserve. And New York is going to get what they vote for. He is leading not despite his views. Okay, so it's not like, oh, he has these views, but he's leading anyway. He is leading because of his views. And he is making it very clear this is how he believes, and people are literally voting for that. Okay, so you can feel sorry for New York, and you can feel sorry for New Yorkers who don't vote for him, but the majority in this case so far are voting for a communist, and we'll see if they get what they deserve. Well, I told you that we would continue to follow up on some stories, and one of the stories I wanted to follow up on this week is the Carmelo Anthony indictment. Carmelo Anthony, he's the Texas teenager who allegedly fatally stabbed another high school boy. And when I say allegedly, I mean he did. I mean he's already confessed to it. But he fatally stabbed another high school boy at a track meet, if you remember right, and was charged. He was charged with first-degree murder on Tuesday. Finally, Anthony, who's 17. Was indicted by a grand jury on Tuesday for allegedly killing Austin Metcalf, also 17, during an altercation on April 2nd over where Anthony was sitting at the University Interscholastic League's District 11-5A championship in the Frisco area. Quote, "For weeks, my team has been presenting evidence to the grand jury. Today, I summarized that evidence, and I asked the grand jury to return a first-degree murder indictment against Carmelo Anthony," which they did. That's a quote directly from Collin County District Attorney Greg Willis. Anthony faces up to life in prison if he is convicted, and Judge Angela Tucker, who is a Republican, by the way, is presiding over the case, so that's good. Anthony was freed on a $250,000 bond with an ankle monitor, and that's not so good. But his legal team got his bond slashed from $1 million to that. However, the case actually sparked outrage, if you remember right, and aggravated racial tensions when Anthony's fundraiser page raised more than $530,000. Yeah. And his family then, of course, moved into a $900,000 home in a gated community in Frisco. They also hired security for the area. And Anthony has been attending Frisco Continental High School at the time of the stabbing, while Metcalf was an athlete at Frisco Memorial High School. At the track meet, Metcalf allegedly told Anthony that he had to move out from underneath the Memorial High School tent. This is what a witness told police. And Anthony allegedly responded by just reaching inside his bag and telling Metcalf, "Touch me and see what happens." Well, Metcalf reportedly then touched Anthony and told him to punch him and see what happens. And at one point, Metcalf reportedly grabbed Anthony to get him to move, and Anthony then pulled out a black knife and stabbed Metcalf once in the chest and then ran away. Anthony's lawyer, Mike Howard, released a video response to the indictment, arguing that his client's actions were in self-defense, which is highly unlikely, right? We are confident that when all the facts are presented and the full story is heard, the jury will reach the right conclusion and justice will be done, he said. In April, Howard declined to say why Anthony had brought a knife to a track meet. I mean, that question has to be answered first, don't you think? That's, quote, this is a quote, "That's an understandable question, but it's not something that we are prepared to go into," his attorney said. Of course not. It would be irresponsible of me to, or them to say this is why. We ask that the public, as hard as it is, withhold judgment. Okay, well, I mean, we'll see how things go, but Metcalf's father, Jeff Metcalf, said that he is pleased that they're moving forward with the case, saying that with the first-degree murder indictment, it now goes into the court system. This is what the Metcalf's father said. And he says, "I fully believe that justice will be served for Austin Metcalf, and I look forward to the forthcoming trial, but it will never bring back my son." And that is true. It's a tragedy, and we're just hoping for justice to come out of tragedy. Well, another kind of interesting outcome that's happened. Of course, you've heard that we have a ceasefire between Iran and Iraq now, with Iran just simply being devastated, particularly their military, their police heads, and all have been killed, and of course their nuclear industry being destroyed. But Iran authorities are pivoting now from a ceasefire with Israel to intensify an internal security crackdown across the country with mass arrests, executions, and military deployments, particularly in the resistive Kurdish region. Shocker, right? Poor Kurds. Within days of Israel's airstrikes beginning on June 13th, Iran security forces started a campaign of widespread arrests accompanied by an intensified street presence based around checkpoints. This is what officials and activists have said. And some in Israel and exiled opposition groups had hoped that the military campaign, which targeted Revolutionary Guards and internal security forces as well as nuclear sites, would spark a mass uprising and overthrow the Islamic Republic. Well, while Reuters has spoken to numerous Iranians angry at government for policies they believe had led to the Israeli attack, there has been no sign yet of any significant protests against the authorities. However, one senior Iranian security official and two other senior officials briefed on the internal security issues said the authorities were focused on the threat of possible internal unrest, particularly in the Kurdish areas. A Revolutionary Guard and Basij paramilitary units were put on alert, and internal security was now the primary focus, said a senior security official. The official said authorities were worried about Israeli agents, ethnic separatists, and the People's Mujahideen organization in exile opposition group that has previously staged attacks inside of Iran. And activists within the country are lying low now. Quote, "We are being extremely cautious right now because there's a real concern the regime might use this situation as a pretext." This is what a rights activist in Tehran who was jailed during the mass protests of 2022 said. The activist said that he knew dozens of people who had been summoned by authorities and either arrested or warned against any expressions of dissent. Iranian rights group HRNA said on Monday it had recorded arrests of 705 people on political and security charges since the start of the war, and many of those arrested have been accused of spying for Israel. NRNA said that Iranian state media reported 3 were executed on Tuesday, and Iranian and the Iranian Kurdish rights group Hegna said confirmed this, that they were all Kurdish. Iran's foreign interior ministries did not immediately respond to any of this. They're just carrying out the operations. One of the officials briefed on security said troops had been deployed to the borders of Pakistan, Iraq, and Azerbaijan to stop infiltration by what the other official called terrorists. The other official briefed on security acknowledged that hundreds had been arrested. Iran's mostly Sunni Muslim, Kurdish, and Baloch minorities have long been a source of opposition to the Islamic Republic, chafing against rule from the Persian-speaking Shiite government in Tehran. The 3 main Iranian Kurdish separatist factions based in Iraqi Kurdistan said some of their activists and fighters have been arrested and described widespread military and security movements by Iranian authorities. Ribaz Halini from the Democratic Party of Iranian Kurdistan, or KDPI, said Revolutionary Guards units had deployed in schools in Iran's Kurdish province within 3 days of Israel strikes beginning and gone house to house for suspects and arms. The Guard had taken prospective measures too, evacuating an industrial zone near their barracks and closing major roads for their own use in bringing reinforcements to Kermanshah and another region that's a major Kurdish region. A cadre from the Free Life Party of Kurdistan, who gave her nom de gras of Fatim Ahmed, said the party had counted more than 500 opposition members being detained in Kurdish provinces since the airstrikes began. Now, Hamed and an official from the Kurdish Komala party, who spoke on conditions of anonymity, of course, both described checkpoints being set up across Kurdish areas with physical searches of people as well as checks of their phones and documents. How would you imagine that would go over here in the States? But we'll keep them in prayer. Obviously, a lot of executions and things not only have started to happen, but they're probably going to continue there. And another area that you're going to want to keep in prayer, and this comes by way of an opinion piece by Brad Brandon. He is the founder and CEO of Across Nigeria. And he wrote an opinion piece. He said, over the past 10 years, northern Nigeria has quickly risen to the top of the list as the most dangerous place to be a Christian. Most Christians are killed here. More Christians are killed here than anywhere else in the world. The data show us that it's not by slim margins. According to International Christian Concern, in 2022, 90% of all Christians killed in the world were killed in Nigeria. And last year, the number was around 70%. The persecution of Christians in northern Nigeria has quickly evolved into a full-on genocide. But how did this happen? How did the region become a stronghold for this violence against those who follow Christ? Most of the region is a virtual Wild West of Africa, leaving northern Nigeria largely unchecked with a sparse military presence. The geography, coupled with a rise in Islamic extremism, has allowed groups like Boko Haram and ISIS-Wa to flourish unimpeded. According to the most recent statistics, Boko Haram alone is responsible for the deaths of 38,000 people between 2011 and 2023. Their growth has been so staggering that it has essentially overwhelmed the Nigerian government attempts to stop it. In 2023, he said, I witnessed Nigerian soldiers walk off the job when ordered to fight Boko Haram militants. They told me that fighting Boko Haram was a suicide mission. These terrorist groups keep the people of northern Nigeria in a constant state of fear. They yield this fear skillfully to maintain control. And while he says, I truly believe Nigerian President Bola Tinubu wants to see change in the region, his government is outnumbered and outgunned. Another essentially devastating contributor to the problem is the ethnic conflict between Fulani Muslims, those are the herders, and the Christian farmers. While this is not terrorism, technically, in the traditional sense of Islamic jihad, the results are really no less deadly. There are approximately 17 million Fulani Muslims in Nigeria. Most Fulani are nomadic and predominantly they raise cattle to maintain their livelihood and that type of thing. And in this region, Christians have largely settled and sustained themselves by planting crops. As the Fulani migrant and they as they migrate their cattle over vast distances, those cattle often wander onto the farm fields of Christians, destroying their crops. While some Fulani Muslims have been radicalized, the herder versus farmer crisis is overwhelmingly the result of tensions over land. And for years, he says, I have brokered peace agreements between hundreds of Fulani Muslims and Christian communities. And in nearly every case I have worked, the root cause of the conflict boils down to a violence that arose from cattle destroying crops. And that violence is not one-sided. Christians have retaliated for the destruction of their crops. However, more often than not, these conflicts result in an inordinate number of Christian deaths. The most recent example is the massacre of nearly 200 Christians that happened on June 14th, just a couple weeks ago. As a result of Nigeria's diminishing area for cattle grazing, the Muslims attack Christians as a means of claiming land for their cattle to graze. And further evidence is that every dry season, when access to good feeding grounds is at its lowest, there is a surge in violence between the herders and the farmers there. Northern Nigeria is like much of Africa. It is gripped by severe socioeconomic challenges that fuel instability and hardship. Most people in northern Nigeria live on the equivalent of a little more than $1, that's US dollar, per day. Currently, a 10 kilogram or 22 pound bag of rice costs about $35. So we're talking over a month's wages. People barely earn enough to feed themselves, and the annual inflation rate is around 24%, which drives the cost of food higher and higher, of course. UNICEF has placed Nigeria on its crisis list, stating that over 25 million people are at high risk of food insecurity. These conditions have created an environment that keeps people in a perpetual state of survival. But how do dire socioeconomic conditions contribute to the Christian persecution? Well, inflation and food shortages exacerbate the condition between the Fulani Muslim herders and the Christian farmers, because to them, every day is a desperate fight for survival. Tensions over grazing land, the source of substance for both the herders and the farmers, run at a fever pitch. These socioeconomic conditions are also the reason why so many young men are drawn to radical Islamic groups like Boko Haram and ISWAP. Not only do these groups provide a support system, but they also pay well for people willing to follow their orders and commit violent acts. He says, I've heard reports of Boko Haram paying their fighters $100, that's US dollars, for the successful execution of a single act of terrorism. That's a small fortune in this part of the world. The desperate conditions of northern Nigeria are the fuel that keeps the fire of persecution burning. And these are complex problems in a complex part of the world. That's why he says, across Nigeria, we are driven by a powerful mission. And that mission is not only to uplift suffering Christians, but also to extend Christ's love to Muslims. So, yeah, it's definitely an organization. If you want to help support, it's really a good organization. And he says, by helping Muslims overcome some challenges, we are helping to significantly reduce the violence and bring an end to the suffering. He says, we've done a lot, but we have a long way to go with the proper support. I believe, he says, we can reduce the violence and bring an end to suffering from for the Muslims and Christians in the most dangerous region in the world. Well, like I say, we've had a couple kind of heavy things to pray about this week, but wanted to end on a little lighter note. And this comes directly from Ben Hooper, who writes for UPI. He says that attendees at a high school graduation on New York's Long Island were left seeing double when 15 sets of twins walked across the stage to accept their diplomas. That's 15 sets. The class of 2025 at the Plainview Old Bethpage John F. Kennedy High School, that's a mouthful, right? Walked across the graduation stage Saturday, and among them were 15 sets of twins. Some of the students said they didn't even notice the usually high number of twins until some mothers started noticing. Says, we are friends with a lot of them, but we never counted until our mom and a few other twin moms took account. Principal Heather Vorik said the school previously saw 9 sets of twins and 1 set of triplets graduate together in 2014. Each class has their own unique culture and vibe, she says. This year, I knew coming in that they were going to be very unified. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know what's in the water there, but 15 sets of twins is crazy. That is a lot. So anyway, I'd love to hear your story. Maybe you're a twin. I don't know. I would love to hear from you. And of course, you can always do that at uncommonsensepodcast.com. Please like, share, subscribe. It all helps there on YouTube. And thank you for listening. This podcast is a production of Morganite Communications.